Good morning, and welcome to Handcrafted Insight video. It is Monday, the 22nd of June 2020, and you are listening to a video, you're watching a video, listening to an audio of me working through a book I'm writing called Getting Started. And in this channel, what I'm doing is experimenting with both the ways of writing, how you can organize information, think about it, move it around, critique it, the methods in which you do that, including this idea of kind of Zettelkasten, working with slips of paper, moving information around to make sense of it, and then with what you're listening to, trying to use audio and video to again go back over the content and rework it. So the first thing to note is if you're listening to this, this is very much an experimental piece of work. I'm still trying to figure out how to use the media, how to become more literate in that. And so this is probably not going to be a huge amount of use unless you're really interested in watching how someone creates their own capability in this space. And then in the actual episode itself, I'm going to work through one of the sections in the book and some of the initial thoughts I've had about how to think about these ideas. Specifically, I'm going to think about money and how you can use money more effectively in your project. So again, just as a quick kind of background, the book is around the idea of getting started, what you need to know and what you need to do to get started on a new project, a new business, a new venture. Just how do you get things off the ground and how do you keep them moving? And clearly money is a very important part of that, and so in this episode I am going to discuss the way in which you can use money with purpose. Enjoy the episode. In my last post I looked at how taking the time to understand your customer's customer could help you create a better sales pitch, one based around how you could help them rather than what you could sell them. And then I said I would look at risk next. But before I do that, I want to think about money and look at how money works, how we go about spending it when we're getting started, and whether the way in which we do that makes sense. So there are lots of ways you can spend your money. And I think there are four main ways that just come to mind. One is you spend your money on producing something. You actually go out and make a thing that your customer wants. You can spend money on testing and learning, so that even if you don't make a profit, at least you've learned something you can apply to your business or your project. You can pay for success. You can pay somebody else to give you a leg up to help you get somewhere faster than you would normally. And then finally, there are a whole range of ways in which you can spend money where the outcome isn't certain and you are just hoping and praying that something comes back to you. So these are the four ways that I want to explore in this post. The first way to think about about spending money is just to produce something. So the production expenses associated with creating a thing that somebody else wants. Now clearly there are costs that go into doing that. Some of it is your time and that kind of activity, but on the whole, what we're looking for in terms of production is the cost that go into making a thing. Now the point I make in my post is that one of the conclusions I've come to while writing a blog and thinking about this is that we should start thinking of ourselves as producers. So if you think of yourself as a creative or a writer or a producer or a photographer rather, what you're thinking about is things in terms of what you do. And the only problem with that is no one really cares about what you do. So even the people who should care about you, they care about you as a person, but they're not really that interested in the specific things that you do. And so when you go and talk into a situation and you talk about yourself and your skills and your track record and what you want to do, people switch off. They don't really listen very much, but they get interested. They sit up and they give you their attention when they hear about what's in it for them and how it relates to the things that they're interested in and what they do. So if you really want to get their attention, you have to think about what you're doing in terms of what they're interested in. And then if you also want them to give you give you their money, you need to think about what you're going to give them in exchange, the actual thing you're going to hand over. And so thinking in terms of producing that thing is quite a good mental model. Your task becomes one of arranging your activities, arranging your business, arranging your project in a way that you produce that next thing that the customer needs. And it also works if you are your own customer. If you want to be something, a writer, an actor, a business person, then just watching other people do it and thinking about it won't help. You have to produce things, words. You have to go out and act and create those and create the products that are part of your craft. And the more you produce, the more you understand what people need, and the more likely it is you'll create a market for your work. And in this kind of situation, what you have to do is match your costs to your income, to the revenues you're making. And when you have no revenue, very early in your career, keep your costs low. You try and essentially work for free because your revenue isn't coming in, but then you try and keep your costs low so you can make that thing happen. And you focus producing something that your customer might want and need. And then as you start to get better at that and you sell, the revenue comes in, you start to make a profit. But still, you're best off kind of keeping your costs as low as possible. Investing money only when it's helping you produce that thing your customer wants. So effectively every expense you take on should have a direct relationship with the production of the thing that you're trying to do. Another spending model that you'll come across fairly often is a commission model, where you pay for success. So the simplest case here is when you pay someone for an introduction that later generates some business. Usually in this model there is little to no upfront cost, but you do have to give the person a share of any income you make as a commission. What you're paying for here really is a leg up, a little bit of help in climbing that wall, finding that customer, making those sales. And that's an old and perfectly justifiable way of doing a deal. Except sometimes that's not the case. And that usually happens when there are some businesses like financial services where what people do is make a commission on transactions, not necessarily on the value they make you. And that kind of cycle, the more deals they make, the more money they make, creates an incentive to do deals rather than create value for you. So I use the example of estate agents here, where it seems easy to pay a commission on a sale. Because you think that, well, okay, the more they sell in your house for, the more money they make, therefore the more interested they are. But there are studies that show that effectively, from an agent's point of view, spending more time trying to sell your house for a higher price might make you money, but the extra commission they make isn't worth the effort. So most of the time, it makes more sense for them to try and get the sale to happen as quickly as possible, even if you make less than you could do if you'd waited for longer. So in that sense, what you're really paying for with an agent is the service they provide, which is the cost of advertising, the cost of getting people out there to your property, showing them around. And you might as well pay directly for that service rather than the magical end result of a higher price. So in other words, you are paying for the costs of producing a sale in that situation. And you have to be able to differentiate between a true success-based commission, where you get a result, therefore you effectively pay a commission on that result, versus paying for hope. But it is quite hard to tell the difference sometimes between paying for hope and paying for something real. So that's something to look at in the next bit. Now the next kind of approach to spending money that I think is worth considering is when you know that what you're doing is trying to test and learn. So that's one exception. The idea really is, quite often you don't know exactly what needs to be done when you get started on a new project. There is this period of trial and experimentation, finding out what works and what doesn't work. And this can take a while. And it won't always make you money. But it will almost always produce learning as long as you're looking out for that. So in this model, what you're doing is you're putting money into a project in the expectation that revenues will come in and you'll make a profit. But if you don't, that's okay, because you'll also get some learning out of it. But it would be sensible, to be wise, to try not try and get things perfect at this stage. You learn to live with the imperfections because you can always get rid of them when you've learned what's going to work. The idea here is, if you try and make everything as good as you can right from the beginning, then you'll end up either spending a huge amount of money creating a perfect product for something nobody needs, and that's not really very useful. You're better off working your way towards that as effectively as possible by trying, learning, refining, and then developing your process. So the final bit then is the entire plethora of schemes out there, which are ways of spending money that just fall into the hope and pray category. Now, in some cases, even advertising marketing can be viewed as a test and learn activity, but sometimes it's hope and pray. And I think every single get-rich-quick scheme and all the ads you see for whatever magical course is on your media feed, all those things fall into a hope and pray kind of category. Now, obviously, for the people promoting the course, it is sensible business because it works out. There's some kind of numbers formula sat behind it, and for them, those costs are production costs, or the learning if they can do it. But in general, if you put your money into something hoping for a fast return, then you're in the hope and pray kind of camp. And it really comes down to realizing that if you don't understand how this thing works and how it operates and how it makes money, then you're best off just staying far away. If it isn't clearly within your circle of competence, as Warren Buffett would say, then you don't understand it. It's that thing about being at the poker table, and if you don't know who the patsy is, then you're the patsy. What you're trying to do is put your money to work in the right way, and the way in which you could do that is to focus on what you get out of the process. So in this kind of finished model that I've used in the blog post, the point is the first three ways of spending your money produce something. They get you something in a sense of you get a profit because you've sold something to a customer, you've got some learning out of it, and again, you've got a sale, less commissions you need to pay. And they're effectively based on making something happen. The other thing is they keep your costs low, which is crucial when you're getting started on any project. And in addition to cost, you can also get somewhere faster. If you learn which direction works for you, well, that's going to mean you waste less time in the wrong direction. If somebody helps you get there faster, then that's a conversation that might have taken you months or years to do yourself. So speed does matter. And the skill that comes into it is starting to recognize the ways that don't contribute, the ways that trip you up, that cost you more and waste your time. And these are the ways that you have to avoid. You need to see them as a risk and figure out how to avoid them, get around them, do something else. Because if you can't manage your own risks, then how will you manage them for your customer? So this is something I need to explore again in a few more of these sessions. This idea of risk. And one of the ideas I have is perhaps in the next section, I might look at hard times. How do you operate when your customers are in trouble, which is a fairly topical thing at the moment. So, hopefully you've enjoyed listening to this. Again, just as a reminder, you'll find the actual blog posts on my website, which is handcraftedinsight.com. I'll leave a link below to that. If you do have any comments and stuff, I'd welcome them. And once again, please bear in mind, all this is an experiment as I try and pull together a workflow and toolkit that lets me learn how to produce books and content in an effective way. And my main objective here really is not just to pump out stuff which is simple and easy, but to produce material that has a purpose, that helps you and me learn something new, and which has some level of grounding in research and critical thinking. all of which I think are just to help create a better quality of thinking around some of these concepts that are so important to us in the way we live and work. So, once again, thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you next time.